Hey y'all, I'm Rylan. Welcome to my channel. It has been a minute since I have done a single book review video, but I'm very happy to be sitting here in front of y'all today to share a release day review for a very popular author's newest release. In case you did not see from the title and or thumbnail, today I'll be reviewing The Locked Ward by Sarah Pekkanen. This is a release that came out today, ideally, I think, when this video comes out, on August 5th from St. Martin's Press. I was very honored to receive an ARC of this book on NetGalley. It was one of my most anticipated reads of the year. I have read several books by Sarah Pekkanen in the past and have enjoyed them, and I was very excited to have a copy of this book to read. I finished it like 2 days ago, which is crazy for me because I'm not very good at reading my NetGalley ARCs on time. We did it this time, and so I thought it would be very fun to do a little bit of a dive into this book on its release day, and I'll share my personal thoughts on this one. But before I share my own thoughts and my own rating, I do like to start off with a synopsis and content warning list, so let's go ahead and chat about those very quickly. This is a new mystery thriller about two twin sisters who have no idea that the other one exists until a murder happens one night in Charlotte, North Carolina, and one of our twins, Georgia, is sent to a psychiatric ward to await her trial. Her family had a lot of connections, and somebody higher up has her sent there versus jail, and while she's there, she requests that her twin sister Mandy comes and visits her. Georgia had no idea that Mandy existed until very recently, right before this murder occurred, and now she wants to see her sister. She believes that Mandy, her twin, is her only hope in finding answers and getting her out of here and keeping her from also getting killed in the process, because something sinister is going on right now, she believes, and she really wants help, while she's also putting up this front that she doesn't speak, she doesn't react to things in the psychiatric ward. She's trying to stay safe in there while also trying to figure out a way to communicate with her twin sister. We're also following Mandy, the other twin. She also had no idea about Georgia's existence until a lawyer calls her and asks that she visit Georgia in the psychiatric ward. Mandy is so confused. She feels as though her parents have lied to her entire lives. They've both passed away, and now Mandy wants to find answers. She has no idea if she can really trust Georgia. She doesn't know why no one told her that she had a twin sister, what led them to being split up, and trying to figure out the truth of this murder that happened that Georgia has been accused of. So we are following multiple POVs. We have two different settings. We have Charlotte and a town 90 minutes away from Charlotte, North Carolina. We have the psychiatric ward. We are following two sisters who are living two very different lives and are stuck in two very different places. Content warnings for this book do include murder, violence, forced institutionalization, gun violence, assault, infertility, and light sexual content. Now, to share my own personal rating of this book, I have kind of gone back and forth a little bit on my personal rating. When I first rated it, I gave it a certain star rating, but the next morning I woke up and I was still feeling conflicted on my thoughts on the book, especially the ending of it. So I have sort of adjusted my rating a little bit, nothing super crazy, but my current final rating of The Locked Ward by Sarah Pekkanen is 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. For the first 80% of it, I was hooked. In terms of the plot, we have a very intense and exciting plotline from the very start. We are thrown in on the action. The murder occurs in the first chapter, we find out about it, and we are thrown into the lives of these two sisters right away. This book is full of short chapters, and because we are following Georgia and Mandy's POVs at the same time, Sarah Pekkanen does a great job of leaving cliffhangers that force you to read the other sister's POV before you can find out what happened to the first sister at the end of her last chapter. So there are a lot of cliffhanger feelings, a lot of desires to want to keep reading the book because the plot keeps you hanging. One, with the short chapters that make you want to know what happens next, and two, because you don't get to see what happens to that sister back to back to back because you're filtering through sisters every other chapter. So you have to wait a little bit to get those answers that you might have wanted at the end of a certain chapter. We find out different information depending on where we are in the plot and the setting. First, when we are in the ward with Georgia, we get to learn a lot about her family dynamics, the trauma that she went through as a child, and just the dysfunctionality of her family growing up and how not physically abusive it was, but how very emotionally abusive and traumatic it probably was for both her and her sister growing up. And so we get to learn more about that wealthy family and also her experience in the psychiatric ward. She does not feel safe. Some of the nurses are not very kind. They are very shady people. Some of the people that she is in this ward with scare her and try to assault her, and there's just a lot that goes on in this ward, even though you are kind of locked away in this setting with Georgia because she cannot leave, obviously. So there is things that happen in this plot, but I do feel as though most of the outside action, of course, happens with Mandy's POV. She is the one who's traveling back and forth from her hometown, her apartment, to Charlotte, North Carolina to find answers in Georgia's apartment, to interview people. She discovers a dead body at one point from somebody who was connected to both Mandy and Georgia and who is helping them find answers about this family drama that was going on. And so you get to see more of that action-packed plot in Mandy's POV, but that does not take away the intensity of Georgia's plot, even though she is stuck in this place that she does not want to be in. I'm somebody that when I read thrillers, I can typically lean toward or full out guess the plot twists that are going to happen. I don't know if this is just because my brain works too hard when I read fiction, or if I've just read so many thrillers at this point in my life that it's easier for me to kind of figure out what I think might end up happening. But in this one, I did not guess what was happening. This is such an easy and fascinating and intense and fast-paced plot that I don't think I really had time to sit and think about what could happen in the end, because I just wanted to keep reading. I never put the book down. Every time I picked it up, I just wanted to zoom through the chapters. I didn't really think too hard about what was going on. I just was kind of along for the ride. I was hooked in the plot, I was hooked in the characters, I was hooked in the overall storyline and wanted to see what happened. And because of that, because of just kind of letting my personal thoughts go while I was diving into this one, I did not guess the plot twist at all, which is kind of rare for me. However, that kind of led to my confusion in the end, and we'll talk about that in a second with the characters, because I have some spoilers that I'll mark out, but I do want to mention that for anybody else who has read the book and maybe can help me understand a little bit better. But overall, in terms of the plot, if you're looking for a thriller that is very easy to get through, not a super complicated plot with multiple timelines, a ton of POVs and different things going on, I would recommend this book for that aspect. But moving on into the characters, I am a huge fan of unlikable or unreliable characters or narrators in my thrillers. I thought that Mandy and Georgia were both very likable. They're not perfect characters, but I did really like them both. I was rooting for them to be reunited in the end. I wanted them to be together, to finally have that twin connection that they knew they were missing for their whole lives, but didn't actually realize that they were missing until this murder happens at the beginning of the book. I really enjoyed both of them. I liked them both very much. In Mandy's chapters, we are following her in the first person perspective, and in Georgia's chapters, we are following her from second person perspective. So it almost feels like you as the reader are Georgia, which I liked. I don't typically read books with second person, but I did enjoy this one. Sometimes that perspective can confuse me and can make it more challenging for me, at least, to be able to picture the story, to kind of immerse myself in the world building of a book, even though second person kind of invites you into the story. I thought it was very well done in this case. I was never lost, I was never bored. I thought that it was very well done, and definitely is inspiring in terms of how you can use the second person POV to drive a story. There were, however, some side characters that end up playing some pretty vital roles in the plot that confused me and were a big part of the reason why I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars versus the original 4-star that I gave it. And this is where I'm going to go ahead and put a spoiler bar right here, so you can skip ahead via the timestamps down below to whatever time I end up putting in this bar, and you will not be spoiled for this book. But if you have read this book, I have some questions because I'm confused and I want to see if I'm the only one who is confused. First up regards our character Patty. She is a patient in the ward with Georgia and they become friends in the end. Patty gets to leave the psychiatric hospital before Georgia does, but one day she comes back and she reveals this truth that hey, I actually work for the senator and we are going to pin you for this murder. You will not be able to win in the end. You will be stuck in prison for the rest of your life, or you will end up being executed. But then in the end, the senator very obviously comes clean. He figures out what happens with the murder that happened at the beginning of the book, and he personally comes to help Georgia out of the psychiatric hospital. He does not seem like a shady guy, so I was very confused on why Patty came back and why her role in the story was as the senator's like right-hand man, who was not officially on his payroll, who did kind of the dirty work for the senator, because from what I could tell, the senator was not shady by any means. In the book, there are assumptions that are made about him, but none of those are true in the end. They were actually more of a fatherly thing versus like a romantic affair thing that was going on. And yes, he's having an affair, of course, with Georgia's mother, but I don't see why Georgia was threatened so much over this whole murder when in the end, like, the senator did the right thing. And I guess that part just kind of confused me because I felt like it added tension that was very interesting for a while, but when the plot twist happens and the book ends, I didn't quite see why that character was necessary. It honestly confused me more than anything. And it would have made more sense if the senator was behind the murder and he was trying to cover it up, but he had no idea who committed the murder of Georgia's sister. He was just trying to get justice for what had ended up happening, so that part very much confused me. Spoiler over though, I don't know, maybe it's just me who didn't understand that or who didn't like it or vibe with it. It just ended up adding another layer to the characters and plot that I just ended up being confused by and didn't really love. Overall though, I will say for a thriller, this book, especially the main characters, are very enjoyable. They are very likable. I was rooting for them. I do enjoy thrillers where I'm kind of like not rooting for the main characters, or I even dislike the main characters, because I do feel like that is a staple of the genre, and I love books with unlikability or unreliability in them. But this one is very much a fresh breath of air because both main characters are very likable, and I wanted them to come out winning in the end. I very much flew through this book. I did enjoy it. Like I've already said about the plot and the characters, both were very interesting. I was very curious to see what ended up happening just based off the rotating POVs. The short chapters made me want to keep reading because of all the cliffhangers that we got, and I appreciated how Mandy and Georgia were both explored as characters. However, my confusion in the end came from some additional plot points that happened as like a plot twist of sorts that didn't quite make sense and left me with more questions than answers. I like to say that with thrillers, I'm all for ambiguous endings, but for me, this one felt a little bit unsatisfying because of the questions that I had based off Patty's character and the senator's character and the things that happen with them at the end of the book. Without spoiling anything, again, that's all I'll say about that. But I do feel like finishing the book left me feeling more confused than satisfied, that I had all the answers, that I had finished a very exciting thriller, and that I was just along for a great ride. I just kind of felt confused and a little frustrated by that confusion in the end, if I'm being honest. But overall, I did enjoy this one. Would I recommend it still? Absolutely yes. I have really enjoyed Sarah Pekkanen's works, whether that is individually as a solo author or with Greer Hendricks. I have read 4 books now by the author and have given all of them 3 stars or higher, so I do very much enjoy this author overall. Very excited that their newest book is out, and I hope you will check it out if this sounds like a book that is interesting to you. If you have read any books by Sarah Pekkanen, feel free to comment down below and let me know what they were. I know she has a lot of backlisted books that I have not yet read, but I might end up checking out someday. But that is all that I have for today's book review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all in the next one.